Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.
20 movies that made Walt Disney Pictures. Walt Disney Studios is officially a century old. Other studios reached the same milestone, but Disney has done something more impressive than staying alive. They have turned their movies into a media empire that practically has its own genre, the Disney movie. It is a genre that serves as the pinnacle of family entertainment. The best Disney movies are cute, colorful, and fun for kids, but they're just as fun, lively, and even fun for theater adults. These are the films that paved the way for 100 years of Disney's iconic filmmaking empire. 1 of 20. Willie's Steamboat. Studio founder and namesake Walt Disney created Mickey Mouse on a train from Manhattan to Hollywood in 1928. When he and his brother Roy's studio were on the brink of bankruptcy on a major project. The duo lost control of their first successful cartoon character, Oswald, and needed a sure hit to rebuild their animation studio. You know the rest. Mickey Mouse became a financial success and an iconic figure known around the world. The rubber cartoon Steamboat Willie was the third cartoon in which the original Disney character played a role, but it opened the gates of Disney Studios' phenomenal success. According to the Walt Disney Family Museum, the animated short was one of the first to use synchronized sound and was such a success that it outsold and received more buzz than the films it was intended to be released for. Did. 2 of 20. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Disney spent the next decade perfecting the art of animation with a series of short films featuring their now iconic characters. A significant number of these shorts, such as The Three Little Pigs, The Old Mill, The Tortoise and the Hare, and Ferdinand the Cow, even received Oscar nominations, with Disney earning 13 Oscar nominations and 7 Oscar nominations. Oscar winner from 1932 to 1938. These were just a way to warm up for the studio's biggest achievement. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is the first feature animation in the history of cinema. The preview of this film in 1937 and a wide release the following year met with wide acceptance. The release of this film was not its only achievement. Disney animators created characters that moved in realistic ways that enhanced their personalities and were more like real people than just cartoon bubbles of animated ink. The following year, the Academy Awards honored Disney with a Special Achievement Award. 3 out of 20. Fantasia. The release of Snow White turned the Disney studio into a powerhouse of artistic endeavor, and Fantasia is the clearest example of the standard that House of Mouse could set even in its infancy. This means that Disney can pursue artistic endeavors without worrying about the end result. However, Fantasia would become one of the studio's most famous and ambitious animated works. Scenes from classical compositions such as Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker Suite and Beethoven's Symphony No. 6 are interspersed with cartoonish landscapes ranging from delightful to downright dark. The most famous segment is The Sorcerer's Apprentice, starring Mickey Mouse, set to Paul Ducas's orchestral masterpiece of the same name. In which Mickey dons a sorcerer's hat that quickly becomes too powerful for him. 4 out of 20. Pinocchio. There are many good reasons why Disney's live-action remake of this classic animated legend failed at the box office, but the biggest one is the expectation that its predecessor had to live up to. Disney's 1940 retelling of another classic children's story also combines its now trademark cartoon humor with the deep emotional wells of its characters. The scenery is immersive and like worlds that extend beyond the borders of the screen. The animators also used new technology, such as a multi-plane camera that could project 3D onto a flat screen scene to achieve a sense of depth and realism. Characters such as Jiminy the Cricket, Figaro the Cat, and Cleo the Goldfish also helped develop the formula for future Disney film successors. 5 out of 20. Dumbo. The golden years of Walt Disney Studios were not peaceful. Despite being the first studio to make an animated feature and being the studio with the most Oscar nominations, they were still short of funds. So they rushed the project into production and it became another Disney classic. The heartwarming story of an elephant with unusually large ears who uses them to fly and glide with the grace of a bird is almost as great as a classic movie. The film gave Disney the money it needed to operate and became the studio's first major motion picture, proving that it could create great animated stories as well as adaptations in the past. 6 out of 20. Bambi. Dumbo's money and critical success paved the way for one of the studio's most popular hits and successful films in the history of its medium. The story of Bambi comes from a German writer named Felix Salten, who used the story of an innocent baby doe forced to grow up too fast in a cruel world of violence is meant to be an allegorical tale of oppressive regimes. The German Nazi Party noticed the parallels and banned the book in 1935. The Disneyfied version doesn't follow the novel exactly, but it presents some of its main themes about the power of love and the fragility of life and the earth. Bambi also received high praise for its animatic achievements, which seemed to get better with every film. Even its use of new Foley sounds paved the way for new sound achievements in movies. 7 of 20. The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Disney scores 2 back-to-back hits, giving them the financial means to take bigger risks. This time, the studio attempts its first anthology film since Fantasia. This double feature includes 2 stories based on the legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving and The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. Both meet the high standard of Disney excellence but in very different ways. The Mr. Toad story is more eccentric than the cartoonish main character. The Ichabod Crane story presents some very new territory for Disney as the studio's first attempt at a horror film. Both continue to show Disney's unique ability to capture the spirit of its source material while mining its own identity and legacy. Eight out of 20. Cinderella. The anticipation for Disney's adaptation of this classic tale could not be higher, which meant the pressure could not be more intense. It not only had to live up to the standards set by classics like Snow White and Bambi, but it could also break Disney's studio if it failed. The advent of World War II caused economic hardships across the entire film industry in almost every major film production and studio. Disney bet a lot on Cinderella being the film that could pull his company out of the slump. Fortunately for Disney, the bet put his studio back in the green. A tale of adversity balanced with genuine humor was just what audiences needed after a decade of conflict, and the music set a new standard of excellence for Disney's films. The score and the iconic song Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo both received Academy Award nominations. 9 of 20. Treasure Island. Animated films may have built Disney's studio, but they can be an expensive prospect. Disney knew he needed to move his studio towards live-action productions, and he started with this iconic adaptation of Robert Louis Stevenson's timeless adventure. Another reason the Disney brothers decided to make their first live-action film had to do with the profits of their films made in England. Disney's films made over $1 million in profits, but the money they made there could only be spent there. So Disney and RKO Radio Picture commissioned a production of Treasure Island. Stevenson's story was a perfect choice since it presented a rollicking adventure with colorful characters. It also helped establish a studio on British soil that could increase Disney's production and bottom line. 10 of 20. Alice in Wonderland. Disney spent many years trying to adapt Lewis Carroll's whimsical, absurdist story into an animated film. Almost every great writer tried to adapt the story for film for Disney's studio. Aldous Huxley's Brave New World even tried writing a script for Disney at one point. By the time Disney settled on a script he liked, it still took 5 years and $3 million to produce a feature-length film for theaters. Like every new Disney animated film, the stakes were raised higher and higher, and believe it or not, the final release was considered a critical failure for the studio. So, how does a failure fit into Disney's foundation? For starters, his achievements in character and scene design showed how both could be leveraged to make engaging stories that jumped off the screen. 11 of 20. Peter Pan. The story of Peter Pan is another one of those classic children's tales that seemed destined to become a Disney animated feature. The studio's adaptation of J.M. Barrie's timeless story about a high-flying boy who refuses to grow up in a mystical playground of mermaids and pirates would turn the corner on what animated films could do on a big screen. Peter Pan made full use of its colorful settings thanks to breathtaking paintings and ingenious lighting designs. Building on the goofy character designs of Alice in Wonderland, the film's cast featured a mix of lifelike human characters and cartoony creations like the wily Captain Hook and the tick-tocking croc that ate Hook's hand. The most stunning achievement was the shimmering design of Tinker Bell, animated by prominent artist Mark Davis, who made the character move like a human performer that could make audiences forget they were just looking at a series of ink paintings on celluloid. 12 of 20. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Jules Verne's classic novel is one of those fantastic epics that Hollywood seemingly could not truly replicate on the big screen. But Disney was established and well-funded enough to take on the task. Disney's adaptation of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was the first live-action film produced entirely under his studio's banner. It was also the first Disney film to use the groundbreaking CinemaScope lens that could capture the film's biggest moments on an even bigger screen. The special effects budget needed to recreate the famous Nautilus submarine and the epic battle with a 40-foot-long giant squid that required 2 expensive shots made it one of the most anticipated films of the decade. It also became one of the most ambitious cinematic projects of its time that built its own word of mouth and made it a critical and financial juggernaut. 13 of 20. Lady and the Tramp. The successful use of CinemaScope was not limited to Disney's live-action pictures. This romantic comedy about 2 dogs from different sides of the streets was the first of Disney's animated films to bring this massive cinematic technology to the big screen. The story for Lady and the Tramp marked a departure from its usual use of fairy tales as source material. The original story came from a story called Happy Dan, the Whistling Dog, written by Ward Green that ran in Cosmopolitan. The designs for the dogs came from animator Joe Grant, who first drew sketches of his Springer Spaniel named Lady in the 1930s when Disney was just starting to build his film empire. Both of these sources were combined to create Lady and the Tramp. The emotional depth of its animal characters made it an endearing story that would inspire filmmakers for generations to come. 14 of 20. Mary Poppins. P.L. Travers, the author of the Mary Poppins books, was notoriously stingy about giving away the rights to her beloved novel about a magical British nanny. Walt Disney himself had to woo the author to prove that he not only understood the material but would do it justice if he made a film based on it. The story of its making is so legendary that it has its own film with 2013 Saving Mr. Banks. Disney's Mary Poppins is the definition of a film iconoclast, even if Travers didn't like the film. She's in a very small minority. The film was one of the first to mix live action with animation, as Mary, played by Julie Andrews, and Bird, played by Dick Van Dyke, travel through one of his chalk paintings. The film became an artistic and technical marvel. It also became the studio's most successful film at the time of its box office release as the year's highest-grossing film. It was a hit among critics, earning 13 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture and Oscar wins for Andrews for Best Actress, Best Film Editing, Best Effects, and 2 of the 3 Best Music categories. 15 of 20. The Jungle Book. This classic tale based on the works of Rudyard Kipling may be a masterpiece of storytelling, but it carries a sad distinction as the final film overseen by Walt Disney before his passing in 1966. The production behind Disney's Jungle Book feature is one of the most challenging in the studio's history. The scripts went through several rewrites because they had to meet the high bar set by Kipling's work and Disney himself. The struggle to find the right tone between meeting Disney's expectations and paying homage to Kipling's iconic work almost derailed the movie. The music ended up saving the whole project. Songs like The Bare Necessities and I Wanna Be Like You, sung by jazz great Louis Prima, gave the film its sense of whimsy and comedy and breathed life into characters like Baloo the Bear and King Louie, while the storyline stuck with Kipling's original vision. It's become one of Disney's most beloved and successful films. 16 of 20. Tron. The loss of Walt Disney, mixed with audiences' changing tastes, created a bit of a slump throughout the 70s and early 80s. There were some notable hits, like Robin Hood, but none of them were big enough to pull them out of their rut. Once again, the studio needed to pivot to something new to bring people back into the theaters. So, in 1982, the studio turned to the burgeoning world of computer animation to create a completely original adventure film. Tron star Jeff Bridges as a renegade computer hacker who gets sucked into the computer of a multinational corporation run by an evil AI hell-bent on controlling all of the world's computer systems. The film mixed live-action special effects with awesome-looking computer-generated scenery and action scenes. CGI may be in every other movie, but back then, audiences had never seen anything like it, and they flocked to the theaters to be the first to witness this new transition into cinematic technology. 17 of 20. Beauty and the Beast. The Walt Disney Studios set another huge record with this stunning and timeless classic. The Academy Awards granted a Best Picture Oscar to its first animated feature ever in 1992 with Disney's Beauty and the Beast, based on the classic 18th century fairy tale. The film worked brilliantly on every level. The animators used computer technology to create the stunning ballroom dance scene. The songs written by Oscar winner Alan Menken make the story pop with vibrant sounds and colors. The characters are voiced by the likes of Angela Lansbury, David Ogden Stiers, and Jerry Orbach, but they get so deep into their characters that you don't recognize them. It is unquestionably the culmination of Disney's vision for his studios and the medium of film. 18 of 20. Toy Story. Making a feature film entirely on a computer may be commonplace in today's industry, but Pixar's first attempt with Toy Story was no small feat. However, the hundreds of thousands of hours dedicated to making it would launch Pixar and Disney to a status never seen before in the film industry. Toy Story was a technological achievement. It was also a trendsetter in storytelling. The tale of Andy's toys is familiar to kids and adults who had a favorite toy when they were children, and the humor and emotion could reach anyone of any age in the audience. How many kids' movies can say they are just as entertaining to the adults who took them to the theater? Toy Story's success created a whole new medium for animation and storytelling. 19 of 20. Pirates at the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. When Disney Studios announced it would start adapting its theme park rides into feature films, a lot of people thought it must have meant the movie idea well had run dry. Instead, the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie turned out to be one of the studio's most successful and beloved films, live action or otherwise. The trailer showed Jerry Bruckheimer's name attached to the project, a filmmaker known for focusing more on special effects than story. The storyline seemed to be repeating the scenes from the iconic boat ride. The film, however, turned out to be a clever, well-written, and fantastic journey into a genre of movie everyone thought had run out of original ideas long ago. It not only spawned a new Disney franchise but one of its most beloved characters, the sly and wily Captain Jack Sparrow, played to perfection by Johnny Depp. Sparrow is so beloved that Disney worked his animatronic character into the Pirates of the Caribbean ride in both parks and built an impressive attraction based on the film franchise in Shanghai Disneyland. 20 out of 20. The Princess and the Frog. Even though Disney Studios has been churning out movies for decades, none of its feature films offered proper representation to its viewers until this 2009 Oscar-nominated hit. The Princess and the Frog was the first of Disney's animated features to include a person of color as its lead character. It also updated the classic story of the Frog Princess to a New Orleans tale that beautifully recreated the iconic town's preserved buildings and signature style and wasn't afraid to take risks by making its lead prince character into an egotistical buffoon who has much growing up to do as other characters. It also paved the way for future roles like Halle Bailey's performance as Ariel in the live-action remake of The Little Mermaid. 20 Movie